Good afternoon. Welcome to INSA's Wednesday Wisdom with Suzanne White. I'd now like to introduce INSA President Suzanne Wilson-Heckenberg.
Good afternoon, and thank you. We are pleased to have Suzanne White here with us today, the Deputy Director of DIA. We would love to hear from our virtual attendees throughout the program. If you'll note, there's a screen on the right side corner of your computer. I would encourage you all to ask your questions, identify both your name and your organization. I'm happy to report that we have over 800 registrants for today's Wednesday Wisdom. And I also want to remind everyone that today's event is open to the press and on the record. A recording should be available sometime tomorrow afternoon if you'd like to review or forward it along to a friend. And last but not least, I wanted to mention at the end of today's program, there's a survey. I continually forget to remind folks about it at the end of the program, so I'm reminding you up front. It only takes about a minute to complete, and we would really appreciate your feedback. So without any further ado, I would like to introduce Greg Myers, Vice President of Federal Business for Microsoft. Microsoft Azure is our sponsor today and has made this program possible for you all. Thanks so much, and over to you, Greg.
Great. Hey, thank you, Suzanne, and welcome everybody. First, I want to thank INSA for hosting today's conversation. Microsoft and our Microsoft Azure platform are so pleased to sponsor this program and support INSA and so much important work that you folks do to hold these vital conversations that keep the community connected. So thank you to INSA. We've had a 40+ year relationship with this community, and we're excited to sponsor Ms. White's presentation today. Our work across the national security space, especially in the area of cloud innovation and some of the critical response efforts that are being covered in the crisis today have really been an effort in partnership. And so it really gives me great pleasure to introduce our speaker today. Suzanne White has served as the Deputy Director for DIA since October 2018. In this capacity, she's assisted Director Ashley in executing DIA's mission and managing a workforce of more than 16,000 military and civilian employees worldwide. So without any further ado, welcome, Suzanne, and thank you.
Thank you very much, Greg. I appreciate the introduction. Let me extend my thanks also to Suzanne, to the INSA team as well, and thanks to everybody who's dialed in for this afternoon's session. I'd also like to extend a thank you to my DIA teammates who have logged in to listen as well. It's great to see you virtually, as it were. So I'd like to start actually by highlighting DIA's mission and then spend a few minutes discussing how we've stayed focused during these last few months of the pandemic. So when warfighters, policymakers, and weapons developers need to know what's in an adversary's playbook, they rely on DIA to provide that insight. We take extremely seriously our job to be an objective provider of facts and assessments about foreign military capabilities and actions. In crisis or not, in a pandemic or not, this mission does not stop. The pandemic was a crisis quite different from what we're used to, as we all know. However, when faced with the question of how to manage the pandemic and its effect on our agency and continue to execute the mission at the same time, we turned to the crisis management model that has served us well in so many other examples. We established a coordination group, which brings together the key experts from around the agency, serves as a hub for all customer intelligence requirements, and coordinates all of our agency's activities across our analytic, collection, and enabling areas. But while the more normal crises often focus primarily on the analysis and collection mission areas for DIA, this crisis put significant stress on our enabling activities, HR, security, IT, facilities, for example. We no question had significant intelligence issues to address, but what seemed very much to be a new area for us was how to manage the agency as a whole in the pandemic environment. From the start, our leadership team and the entire workforce showed amazing resiliency and ingenuity. Our IT team led the charge to move as much of our mission as possible to the unclassified system, given how many of our folks were at home. They made superb risk decisions to move quickly and creatively, sending employees home with their CAC readers, establishing robust unclassified collaboration environments, and supporting various offices seeking to drive their respective missions into the unclassified realm. A key example here, and one that will endure, is the movement of our mandatory training courses to the unclassified network, as well as several others like Art of Supervision and some of our analytic tradecraft courses. As well, our Directorate of Analysis published a telework guide just 1 week into the pandemic to ensure that this core DIA mission cadre maintained its strength through readings, seminars, podcasts, and training. Our analysts working from home are sharpening their skills that they didn't always have time to focus on while in the office. Our HR team kept hiring going. We needed to ensure that we continued to bring on the talent that drives our mission in spite of the pandemic. I have a favorite example I'll share with you. When we were restricted from bringing some of our new folks into other DoD facilities, our HR team actually onboarded some new employees in the parking lot of a Walmart in Tampa. We had them sign their W-2s, we had them take the oath of office right there so that they could get to work back at home. We're also continuing our promotion panels virtually to ensure that our employees don't miss a beat in their career path. And we're interviewing over 1,000 applicants for new jobs virtually in August as we work to keep our hiring pipeline healthy. Our CFO team partnered well with all of you, our industry partners, to translate and implement the CARES Act, continue contracting activities in the unclassified realm wherever possible, and arrange alternative workplaces for some of our contractor teammates. We're also currently knee-deep in the development of our FY22 budget in spite of the pandemic, because as we all know, the budget cycle stops for nothing. Inside our facilities, we're doing everything we can to minimize touches and ensure the safety of our folks coming to work every day. We replaced door plates that we normally press to open a door with a capability that requires only a wave to open the door. We partnered with local distilleries to bring us hand sanitizer that we couldn't find in any grocery stores. And interestingly enough, it actually smells like it comes from a distillery. We got ahead of the supply chain rush by quickly identifying a veteran-owned small business that could provide cloth face coverings to our entire workforce around the globe in over 140 countries. Our Surgeon General obviously has been central to all of this work. And as a result, we're proud to report that there's no evidence of virus transmission in our workplace to date. So none of this would have been effective, though, without robust communications. Reaching over 16,000 people on our team across the globe is not easy, especially when so many are at home. Every piece of workforce communications is replicated on all systems, JWICS, Unclassified, SuperNet. The workforce gets several notices from the agency every week, which is an incredible effort, but one that's absolutely essential to keeping everybody focused. We've also started our own podcast called DIA Connections, which just started this week, as a matter of fact, so please check it out. We continue to adjust to this new normal. There's something new every day, but I'm proud to say that we've done some pretty innovative things so far to keep our mission focused and ensure the safety of our workforce. With that, I'll pause and I'm happy to begin the Q&A.
Thank you, Suzanne. One question that we had, Insa, is, we wanted to know how you all were doing transitioning back to the new normal. But I know you've been in the office. You haven't missed a beat. What are the plans for the rest of the workforce at this point to transition back as we go through this new normal progression?
Sure. We're actually meeting with General Ashley, our director, next week to talk more specifically about the timing for what we're calling phase 2. There's a couple pieces to phase 2, and I won't get into all those details here, but really phase 2 is going to be the beginning of our return to new normal, as you say. So what we're going to be looking at over the coming weeks is bringing more people into our buildings, but doing it in such a way that many are on shift work, many are coming in and leaving at different times, so that we're minimizing bottlenecks, if you will, at entrances. We are going to be taking the temperature of every employee coming in, as we've been doing all along. We need to make sure we don't create huge backlogs and lines outside the building. So there's a lot of work still underway in terms of working out the timing of when employees are going to be coming in, so that we keep everybody as safe as possible. We don't know how long this is going to go on. We are going to be very, very attentive to trends and reporting, both in the regions where our facilities are located and, of course, our facilities themselves, to make sure that we don't get to ahead, if you will, of some of the health trends. We want to make sure that we keep everybody as safe as possible. So it's going to be a very measured approach.
I think we are all struggling with, the best plan forward, and certainly you all have employees all over the world, and so a particular challenge there. Related to COVID-19, and then maybe we'll move on to the questions that aren't, but how does DIA's National Medical Intelligence Center contribute to the nation's understanding of COVID-19? I think not everyone realizes that there is this entity under DIA, such as the Medical Center.
So NCMI, as we call them, National Center for Medical Intelligence, has been part of DIA for quite some time, but you're right, most people didn't know they existed. They've been kind of the quiet champions, certainly all along, and then have more of a spotlight on them, certainly given the circumstances, and rightly so. They bring some phenomenal capability to any medical challenge, and in this case, obviously with coronavirus, working closely with all the other medical experts throughout the U.S. government and World Health Organization and others to bring to bear as much knowledge as possible on this particular pandemic. It's a critical mission, internal to the Department of Defense. On any given day prior to the pandemic, NCMI was crucial to ensuring that our forces understood the medical environment and the medical capabilities in any country that they would be deploying to, for example. And that's an essential knowledge area for our military forces, regardless. But certainly in the pandemic, there's no question that NCMI has really shown, and their expertise has really been recognized, and rightly so.
Have they had to do any type of surge staffing or outsourcing contracting during this time?
So we've had a pretty stable capability there. We haven't had to do too much. We've certainly have other experts in other parts of DIA that bring some medical expertise in various parts of medical science that we've attached, if you will, to NCMI. But they've actually been able to manage quite well, again, because they partner with so many others across the government too.
Right. Along those lines of partnering, I wanted to find a little bit more about how the critical priorities for DIA's collaboration with industry have maybe evolved over the past several months, or maybe they've remained consistent.
So we have thousands of contractor teammates in a normal, period of time. The industry partners that we have for all our DIA missions are indispensable. There's no doubt about it. And certainly we have, upwards of 1,000 folks in our contractor teammate base who have been coming into our facilities every day as mission essentials since this began. So again, truly awesome teammates that we couldn't live without. So from that standpoint, if anything, it's just underscored the role that our industry partners play in our overall mission success. It's been clear every single day.
And so moving on from kind of the new normal right now, as far as DIA's use of artificial intelligence, can you talk a little bit about how you all are using that to address critical collection and analysis challenges that you have?
Sure. There's a pre-pandemic discussion on it, and then there's actually a good pandemic discussion on AI. So as many of you know, we've been investigating and frankly implementing a number of different AI capabilities over the last few years. And certainly our headline capability right now is Mars. So that is kind of a key example for us of where we're going to seek to continue to apply AI, particularly as it matures over the coming years, to the fundamental foundational military intelligence mission that we have. I'm thrilled to share and advertise that we were able to roll out our minimal viable product from Mars, the first one, on May 28th, in spite of the pandemic. That was a mission essential function for us, and we kept that team working full time, both in and out of the building, and they just did a phenomenal job delivering that first capability. And it truly is impressive, and it gives us a lot of hope as we even see just that initial MVP. It gives us a hope and a window into that future where we can see AI truly adding value, adding just capability in terms of the amount of data, and having an AI capability to help our analysts really navigate through that data is just going to be essential to our future, and we're well on the path to do that. What we found even in the pandemic with some of our other existing AI capabilities that it can really be a force multiplier. When we had to send so many of our analysts home in order to minimize the footprint in our buildings, that's really where you kind of see some of the magic of AI play out, where you don't need a human in the loop to do certain parts of the analysis cycle in particular. It really just, again, reiterates the importance of AI as a capability for our mission area, for the future.
So quite a few questions are rolling in, and I would encourage folks to continue to ask them. I particularly appreciate when I get to see a question from a student, so there are no stupid questions. This question here is from Paul Ingholt with Guidehouse, who asked, how do you think your experience as CFO informed your approach to serving as deputy director?
That's a great question, and I don't think I would be the deputy director without my CFO experience. It's in some people's minds perhaps was an unconventional choice to pick a former CFO as a deputy director, but at least from my perspective, biased as it may be, it's essential, because fundamentally my role in DIA is to help General Ashley manage the machine that is DIA, and that machine comprises mission sets, it comprises business operations, HR management, and obviously all of that is underpinned by resources. So having the understanding of the resources, of how to allocate them, how to make trade-offs, how to work with our overseers to get more, to defend, to justify our resources, I think is absolutely a critical skill for a deputy director. And having that skill somewhere in the background doesn't mean that all deputy directors have to have been a CFO by any stretch, but certainly what we've been trying to do even in DIA in general is to make sure all our senior leaders have some pretty substantial experience working with resources, so that whoever's going to be the next deputy director certainly brings that level of expertise to the job for sure. And this environment in particular, our budgets aren't going up anymore. We'll be lucky if they're stable. More likely, certainly, they're going to be decreasing. So those hard decisions of what we can afford to do, what we're going to have to forego, how do we partner better with others to burden share requirements and such, just having kind of that mindset at the deputy director level, I think is very important for all of us.
So while we're on the theme of you and your skill set, I have a question here from a woman on your team, and Shalita Watts at DIA asks, what are the core values that you live by, and how do you ensure that you stay true to work-life balance, family, and career?
So, for me, the values are pretty straightforward. It's family first for me. It's integrity in everything that I do, and it's teamwork in everything that I do. So for those who don't know me, I do have 3 school-age kids, as many of us do, and working in any job while managing school-age kids is going to be challenging, no matter no matter what your industry is, no matter what senior level or not job you might have. And defining balance is an individual thing. For me, balance really equates to predictability in the workspace, so that I know that I can be home at a reasonable time and touch base with the kids and do some homework with them and certainly have dinner with them. For other people, balance may look slightly different from that, and that's something I always recommend to folks when I get that question, is just have that conversation with yourself. What does balance look like for you? But you can't find it in every job. That's just the reality. Some jobs are more predictable than others, and we all have to make that individual choice on which job is going to allow us to have the most balance we can possibly have. I am never going to tell anybody that I'm balanced. I can never say I've actually found it, but I think I get pretty close most of the time, which again is super important to me. So I make the effort. I make it a priority, and you have to discipline yourself to make it work. But it's not always easy by any stretch. But I mentioned a value of mine being teamwork. I wouldn't be able to get anywhere close to balance without teamwork, without relying on colleagues, without relying on the team members that I have throughout the agency, and they rely on me for the same thing. That's essential for all of us to achieve balance too.
Well, I think teamwork is important both professionally and at home, and I highly recommend a dishwasher emptying schedule and enforcing that teamwork. So anyway, Michael Barr at Adobe wants to know what has been the biggest lesson learned for you or even for your workforce on this move to telework?
Challenging our assumptions. You know, and we're all saying it, right? We sit back and we just think to ourselves, my goodness, 6 months ago, we never would have even thought it possible to do what we're doing on Unclassified right now. You know, there's plenty of things we'll never be able to go unclassified with, and that's fine and understandable for any good reasons. But it has been amazing to see what we've been able to do on the unclassified space in any number of our mission areas, not just the enablers that might be, you know, at least on the face of it, more conducive to working in the unclassified realm, but we are doing analysis. We're doing a lot of open source work, you know, with our folks at home. And that's proven to be very effective. You know, we have to be very careful with it. We have a lot of controls in place and, you know, and constant training and reminders to our workforce, because it doesn't come without risk, of course. But it's very exciting to see how much we can do when we really feel motivated to do it, and how quickly we were able to make that shift and do so effectively. It's been amazing to watch, actually.
Yeah, I think it's stretched us all in a lot of good ways, and maybe some that are a little more uncomfortable than others. So Ross Burkhoff at Illuminate wants to know if you can provide an update on the new DIA Open Source Integration Center and what opportunities they might be out there for industry to help support.
Sure. This is one of our more exciting initiatives, I'll say, over the last 18 months or so. Clearly, open source has been an activity in the intelligence community for quite some time. What's new here, really, at least for DIA, is kind of the discipline and the structure that we've put around it. So we did stand up an Open Source Integration Center, an official organization. It's within our Director of Science and Technology, and that was the first time we had done something that formal in terms of putting structure around that function. We've designated the function as a collection activity, not an analytic activity. You know, that's been kind of a blurry part of the discussion for years. And we're creating a career specialty around it. So we're mapping out, for our employees who are going to be working in that space, what does their development path look like? What could their career path look like? What are the various jobs that might lay ahead of them as they progress through that career field? So that's the structure and the discipline that comes with standing up a center like that. It's nascent. We are again, it's within its first year of being stood up. We're adding resources to it in the coming year to include, both federal FTEs as well as, contractor resources will be on the horizon as well, because there's no question that's a growing and necessary area. How far it goes, we'll have to wait and see how it evolves and how effectively we're able to use it. One of a key model, though, for our approach right now is a hub and spoke. Obviously, DIA has so many different components to it to include the combatant commands, and they do a fair amount of open source work themselves, too. What we didn't want was for this center to be the be-all and end-all of that activity for the DIA enterprise, but to be the hub instead. So we do envision the various commands in particular, as well as the various DIA offices, to have kind of their own open source capability and resources that tie back into the center proper. So that's what's going to be evolving over the coming years, and we're pretty excited about it.
So this next question, and I need to put my glasses on for this one. This is from my boss, Tish Long. Hi, Suzanne. Thank you for joining us this evening. 2 questions. Can you answer one or both? She says she's asking everyone these 2. She says you talked about the amount of unclassified work from home. Should we flip the production model to start with unclassified and then layer on secret and SCI as necessary? And second question, what about mobile secure so your folks can at least work at the secret level from home?
Yes and
Thank
yes.
you,
So absolutely, that that's what we're kind of seeing happen already in terms of the first question about you almost start at the unclassified level and then layer on the more exquisite classified aspects of your analysis. That's in some examples that is exactly what is happening. Whether that becomes kind of the model across the board, it's certainly possible, and we'll see kind of where this goes and how this evolves. But certainly that is part of what we're looking at for this extended period that we know we're going to be going through. With regard to the secure mobile, that would be the additional benefit is, at least at the secret level, to have more and more of our folks able to do work from home. And that is something that the Department of Defense writ large is looking at too. While it's very encouraging and we're eager to see it right now, it's also very expensive. So it's not as easy as it obviously has been for us to give a lot of our folks the unclassified laptops to work from home. We are more limited right now in being able to do so at the secret level for folks, but it's certainly something that we're eager to leverage going forward, because even if ideally the pandemic gets under control, so to speak, and we all feel like we can go back in to the office, wouldn't it be great if we had the option to work from home, to work from another location, even occasionally, if not even full time. It would just open up so many more possibilities for workforce management, for recruiting, for leveraging expertise no matter where it is in the world. So we're going to jump on every opportunity that we can, but right now that it's relatively limited right now.
Well, that's very encouraging though to hear. So as you know, INSA has a graduate student program. We have anywhere between 5 to 7 grad students from the area join us for 12 to 18 months, and several, I'm proud to say, have gone on to work at DIA, and I hope they're tuning in, and I want to hear from you guys. But Mary Joykin asked, how can DI compete with the private sector to recruit and retain people with critical cyber and technical skills? And this kind of relates back to our intern program. Some of them go to the private sector and some go to the public sector. So just want to hear a little bit about how DIA is competing for that talent.
Sure. What we try to do when we attract folks, what we do when we attract folks and recruit folks, is emphasize the mission, right? That rarely are you going to find anything by way of excitement and impact and importance to our nation's security than working in the intelligence community. And cyber is a key example of that, certainly, but it applies to other areas too. So, particularly an agency like DIA, we are worldwide. We give our employees opportunities to move around the globe and still work for DIA. And they can work, at the operational level at our combatant commands, at the strategic level at headquarters. They can work inside embassies with some of our collectors. They can work around the world in any number of examples. We also offer such significant training opportunities, that we want folks to come in, and we want them to be eager and hungry to learn something new, and we will help them learn something new. So, they don't necessarily have to come in as the expert. We will teach them, we will grow them, we will, develop them over the course of their career. We will give them the opportunities, to work in other agencies through the JDA programs, so they can obviously work at NSA in the cyber example directly if they want. Particularly in the cyber realm, Cyber Command's JIOC, their Intelligence Operations Center, is manned by DIA. They're all DIA employees. So there's any number of areas in the large DIA enterprise that touches cyber. And again, we like to think that it gives our employees and prospective employees really opportunities that are going to be hard to find in any other examples.
Very well said. I can see why several of our interns were attracted to DIA.
Okay.
So this question is from Fenwick Gilroy, asking, how does DIA work with the DIB to counter threats from cyber, insider threats, supply chain, etc.? What areas, if any, can DIA and the DIB collaborate more closely to protect DoD platforms and capabilities?
So supply chain risk is, absolutely a critical area for us to be understanding and working together on. There's a couple pieces to it. DIA plays a role writ large in assessing the threat to the supply chain, on behalf of the entire department and in some respects other federal agencies as well. And we do have a pretty robust group of experts in our Office of Counterintelligence that do that analysis regularly and increasingly. Then there's kind of the internal look, if you will, at supply chain risk. So again, at the DIA leadership level, how am I making sure that the acquisitions that our agency is making for DIA are safe, and that we understand what risk there might be, with regard to our own suppliers. And this is where, from DIA's perspective, we need to work with our industry partners to understand your respective supply chains. Who are you working with to deliver the capabilities that we're seeking, so that we have kind of a common understanding and common comfort level, that how we're working together is as safe as we need it to be at all levels. So that's I think an area where we'll continue to grow together, and have more of those discussions and look for ways to bring more transparency into those acquisitions, because it's absolutely critical. As we all know, there's been too many examples, and those are only the ones that we know about, right? So we do have to, I think, double down on this as partners going forward.
So here's a question going back to Mars. Whitney Myers wants you to describe exactly what Mars will look like going forward. Examples, the 5 pillars.
So for those not as familiar, we have a database. We've had a database for 30 odd years now called MIDB, and don't worry about what the acronym is, but that was essentially the core database that held all of the information that DIA produced on foreign militaries. What were their capabilities? What was their equipment? Where was it located? Kind of all of that fundamental, as we call it, foundational military intelligence. And it was, because it was 30 plus years old, as you can imagine, it was a little bit clunky. It was very manual intensive, meaning, our analysts literally spend hours putting in data from other sources, manually inputting it into the database, organizing it, et cetera, so it could be particularly useful for them and everybody else that uses it. So as you can tell, even just by that brief description, we really needed to reinvent. So not only did we need a data environment that would obviously be much more agile and user-friendly and attentive to what all our analysts really need, but we needed it to access other data sources that the existing database currently wasn't accessing. So it might seem pretty straightforward and kind of an obvious statement to say we needed a data environment that was going to pull in data from other databases automatically without a human in the loop. You didn't have an analyst have to go hunt through other databases and bring it all in, but we haven't had that to date. So that's Mars, in a nutshell, is going to provide us that access so that our analysts will have it at their fingertips. They can, even in this first MVP, which is focused only on infrastructure to start with, bridges, roads, railroads, things like that. It's amazing to see the difference between an MIDB screen, on a particular region in China compared to what that same region in Mars looks like, just because it is able to pull in social media data, it is able to pull in NGA data and some of the NSA data all in one place. And that alone is remarkable, and that alone is exciting for analysts. Going forward, we're looking at Order of Battle as our next MVP, and that'll be in the January timeframe. And then we're going to look at space and cyber and intel mission data as well over the coming years. So it will be, a crazy robust environment, but that's what makes it so exciting. And frankly, that's necessary. That's what our analysts need in order to be able to stay on top of all the information that's out there and be able to provide the most timely, comprehensive assessments that we possibly can to our customers. It's very exciting. I think it's less exciting for those of us who've never used MIDB, myself included, but when I've sat down with the analysts who use it and I see what they're working with compared to what Mars is delivering for them, it really is just eye-opening and again, exciting. I'm overusing that word, but it is very exciting for the future.
Well, very empowering for those analysts, and also, something for folks to note as far as recruitment goes, to have access to those sorts of programs. So Latarcia Crawford-Jones wants to know, are there any efforts in the works at DIA regarding access and support for small businesses?
So we have a small business office. Many of you have probably worked with them. Karen Mumford is our chief, and she is always looking to make sure that DIA is engaging constructively with small businesses, is figuring out creatively how to leverage small businesses and make sure small businesses are brought into the opportunities that we have available to them. Our mentor protege program in particular has been quite a leader, and as a matter of fact, across the department in that area. So, and going back to your AI question, Suzanne, earlier, when we talk about AI, even internally, and when General Ashley talks about it, he's eager to see who's out there and who can help us think differently, and who can bring us ideas and solutions, that we wouldn't have thought of otherwise. What other companies are out there, what small companies are out there that maybe we've never worked with before, and they have some great contributions to offer. So our small business office is charged with doing exactly that, trying to figure out how to identify who those future partners could be. We also have a future capabilities and innovation office, relatively nascent, and they run our Neetopedia website that some of you may be familiar with. And also the intent there is to give small businesses that maybe we don't have established relationships with, the opportunity and the vehicle by which they can become known to us and open some doors in terms of sharing ideas. So we like to think we're leveraging those two paths, if you will, and there's always more to do. There's always more opportunities out there for us to find new partners.
Thank you. So Jared Gazarick with HashiCorp, we can't have a conversation today without talking about cloud, and he has a good question. It's given C2E's eventuality, what is your agency doing regarding a hybrid cloud strategy, and how cloud agnostic technology, what the investment is like with those?
So we're obviously working very closely with the IC on the C2E, as we have for the last few years on the C2S, and that has become a critical capability for us in many respects. And hybrid cloud, is certainly something that's always going to be in the mix, because we're always taking into account how our mission needs are being met or need to be met going forward and evolving, and we're going to be looking at any and all opportunities. And in an open forum, I'm not going to go into any more detail than that, other than to say, we're obviously joined at the hip, both with the IC and the department, on all the cloud options that are there. And there's no question, that's an essential capability for us.
Great, thank you. So a former INSA intern, now at DIA, Will Cullen, has a question for you. He wants to dig a little deeper into your Mars response. He asks, will we be able to contribute data to Mars from an unclassified environment? Will we be factoring in teleworking moving forward to that? Interesting question, Will.
It is. It's a great question. Right now, Mars is on the JWEX environment only. But obviously, again, as our new normal continues to evolve and mature, who knows where it's going to go? There's no doubt that Mars is intended to bring in all data, including unclassified data, to make sure that the analysts have everything available to them. So it's certainly possible that we will get to the point where we're able to actually, inject, if you will, and ingest data directly from an unclassified environment to Mars. More to come on that. So it's, certainly a possibility.
Thank you. So Jake Powell, who is a current student, is interested in working in the intelligence community. And he understands that DIA has a very distinct mission, but he also wants to know, in your opinion, what else is special about DIA?
So what I love about DIA is that you have so many missions interconnected under one umbrella. So, we're pretty much the only agency you're going to find out there that does analysis, that does collection, that does science and technology, and that does JWICs, that does intelligence dissemination and communications, if you will. You know, you have all of those elements in one house, all working together, complementing each other, feeding each other, pulling it all together to support our customers. It's, you know, that's what's most exciting about DIA to me, because you really can't find that in any other agency. They all do awesome stuff. There's no doubt about it. We wouldn't, you know, DIA wouldn't be able to do its all source mission without everyone else. But that's what's great about DIA, is really kind of seeing all of that weave together into one coherent mission, and for us to be so successful and so necessary to our customers in the Department of Defense in particular as a result of that.
So we have time for maybe 2 more questions. Abraham Borum asks, what best practices have you adopted from IC partners on returning to a new revised normal?
So we've done a lot of collaboration, coordination with our IC partners. Our chiefs of staff meet every week, at least once or twice, comparing notes on how we're all managing. And actually all the agency directors have been meeting every week, you know, to have similar discussions, because, you know, we all want to make sure that we're, you know, anybody coming up with an idea can help everybody else, certainly. And we want to make sure that, that we're all keeping each other safe. And frankly, you know, we all have employees in each other's facilities who are also embedded with each other, that we want to make sure we're all taking care of our partners folks too. You know, we've all shared best practices on things like the temperature screening. You know, that's something that we've leaned forward on, and others have adopted our approach, and some of our equipment we've shared with them, you know, to make that happen. For example, you know, the shift work schedules that we're working through right now, you know, using the whole calendar, not just 5 days of the calendar, things like that. That's, you know, some agencies have thought through a little bit more than others, and, you know, we've all shared kind of perspectives and ideas on that. And that's been indispensable, because there's so many pieces to this puzzle. And, you know, we know, you know, we're all going to have questions every day that we seek to implement this. Something new is going to come up. So, you know, it's great that we're able just to tap into each other, and you know, chances are someone else has already dealt with that, and we take full advantage, and they do the same with us. So it's been great so far, and it will continue.
That's very encouraging. So my final question is from Ashley Tesmer, who's with DoD. Ashley asks, how has COVID changed your approach to leadership and mission at DIA?
So it's funny, because right before I got on this call, I sat in on a DIA workforce discussion about resiliency and managing stress. And it's interesting because what we talked about even in that session is that we have different groups of employees going through different things. You know, we have a good number of our folks coming in every day, and that's stressful in and of itself, because there's many more that are home. And then the folks that are home may or may not have, you know, tons of work to do every single day. So they might feel disconnected. They might feel, you know, wondering what more they can do, and, you know, and how do I do that? And now that it's been several months, it was not just a few weeks and then this will pass. It's, you know, this has been a particular challenge. So for General Ashley and myself, and frankly, all the leaders, you know, communication has been indispensable to this. Making sure that our folks, regardless of what they're doing and where they're doing it, feel valued, feel connected, feel like they haven't been forgotten. You know, just because they're at home doesn't mean we don't consider them part of the team. But that is real. That's a human nature response, I think, to some of these circumstances. And it's our job as leaders to help our folks navigate that. And that can be hard, and that can be challenging, particularly with a large, globally dispersed population. You know, we rely very much on what we call our local leaders, those first line supervisors, to stay in touch with their folks and make sure they're communicating, make sure they're checking in, not just on the work, but on the personal side. You know, how are you doing? You know, what's going on, you know, with your family and things like that. So it's a lot more, I think, than some of our leaders are used to doing. But many of them are rising to the challenge and going beyond. You know, and again, this is a marathon now. We're going to have to keep this up. You know, we're learning all these new skills in terms of being leaders from afar and being leaders virtually and not, you know, putting eyes, so to speak, on our folks on a regular basis. And that can be challenging, and we'll have to just continue working at it, continue getting better at it. But, you know, that's absolutely essential because, you know, our mission isn't stopping. Going back to my opening remarks, there's still enough going on in the world that hasn't slowed down because of the pandemic. So we can't slow down, you know, to a significant extent either. So we need to keep our folks motivated, you know, keep them focused and figure out new ways to apply their talents.
Well, Sue Calwait from NGA joined us for one of these webinars a couple of months ago, and she talked about superpowers and humility being a superpower. Yesterday, Julianne Galena talked about empathy, and what I'm hearing from you is communication is also potentially a superpower. I've made note of all these. So anyway, really appreciate your joining us today and the work that you're doing there for DIA and your advocacy for the community and your workforce. And I also want to thank Microsoft Azure for their support today. And I would be remiss if I did not mention that there will be a survey, real quick survey for folks to fill out at the end of the program. Wanted to mention the new IC, the week of July 6th and 10th, Empowering Women and Engaging Men. And then we have our summit, the AXIA INSA Intelligence Community Summit on September 16th through 18th. It's going to be a 3-day event. But that concludes today's program. Again, Suzanne, really appreciate your taking the time out of your afternoon and being so candid with our virtual attendees this evening.
Well, thank you very much for the opportunity. This has been great. And, you know, I'm thrilled that we were able to have so many people dial in. And I just, you know, please let me extend my thanks to all of our industry partners, because truly, you know, DIA wouldn't be able to achieve its mission without you all. And thank you for you know, sticking with us and being such great partners during the last few months in particular as we face this challenge together. So thank you.
Well said. Take care, everyone. Thanks for tuning in.